day. So we are going to be talking about nutrition, obviously. Now, nutrition is a really easy subject, right? Everybody knows a lot about nutrition. Our nutrition's really easy. Having a good diet, having good results because of that diet's easy for everybody. Would everybody agree with me on that? That nutrition? No, you don't know. So, but to give you my honest opinion, nutrition is easy. It's really easy. Concepts of nutrition are very easy. It's not simple. Big distinction between the two. I think everybody knows just some general good concepts of nutrition. Can anybody just shout out something that you know is good for you in regards to nutrition? What's good? Vegetables are good. Everybody know that? Everybody agree with that? All right, simple, right? Simple. We know vegetables are good. What else is a good key core concept of nutrition? Right amount of fat. So I would say that's actually not one that everybody commonly knows, but I agree with that. In particular, I would say that fat is the most important macronutrient that you can eat. By macronutrient, I'm saying things, come on in Serena. Macronutrients are fats, carbohydrates, proteins, and alcohol is actually a macronutrient as well. They all have different caloric intakes, but fat, I would say, is the most important macronutrient that you can eat. So that is a good thing, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit today. Here you go, Serena. Anybody else? Give me another key core nutrition concept. Something that you know is good for you. I'm not saying that you do it, but that you know is good for you. Avoiding sugars, right? That's going to be a huge one. Everybody knows that, right? Everybody knows that sugar, not to say that we can never have sugar in certain forms, but that sugars are deleterious to our overall health. So there's a lot of things that I think they know. We know that sugar's bad. We know that we need to avoid processed foods. We know that additives and preservatives are probably not the best for us. We know that fast food, even if it's Chick-fil-A, yes, even Chick-fil-A is really not good for us. We know that convenience, if it's convenient, not to say that nothing can be convenient, but if it's overly convenient, chances are it's not going to be the greatest for us. We know that we should drink plenty of water. We know that we shouldn't overeat. We know that we shouldn't have meals at certain times of the day. I mean, maybe that's not obvious for everyone, but certain times of the day, especially at nighttime, we may not want to eat or at least avoid certain foods. So we have all of this information, and if we were able to just take that information that we know or hold to be true, and we were to apply those things, how would that benefit your health? And not you, but us as a society in the United States of America, which is, I'm sure everybody is aware of this, the most obese, most overweight country that there is. How would that benefit us in those parameters? How would that affect our health care? How would that lower health costs? How would that lower taxes that we have to spend because we're spending taxes to pay for health care for people who have made potentially poor decisions, not demonizing or blaming, but potentially poor decisions that are affecting everybody. So it's very easy, but it's not simple. It's not simple to do these things. It's not simple to always, make a nice meal that takes you 30 minutes to an hour to make every single night for your family, and to do that every single night. It's not easy to pack your lunch every single day. It's not easy to sometimes get to the grocery store to make sure you're buying the healthy snacks rather than getting something from the vending machine or stopping at, whatever fast food restaurant. It's not always easy to do those things. So my goal for my patients, whenever I do any nutrition talk, is to give you some knowledge that maybe you didn't already know, or to further explain why some of the things you already hold to be true, why those things are important, and to give you maybe some tips as to how I implement some of these things in my health and for my family. But it all comes down to each individual taking action for themselves, right? Personal responsibility, personal accountability. And because of that, what I like to start with when it comes to nutrition, really when it comes to health in general, is why you want it, or why you want to do it, right? Why are all of you here on a beautiful Saturday morning? I would assume because you want to learn something that's going to further your health, and that's going to help you to live a longer, better quality of life, free of sickness and disease. I hope that's, or maybe you just want to lose some weight, right? That's also, when it comes to nutrition, a lot of times that is the goal too, which understandable, that's going to help with those other objectives. And of course, I want that for my patients. I want that for myself and for my family, but it comes down to why we want those things. If we want it just because right now we're dealing with something that we don't like, if it is, body composition, if it is inflammation in our body, if it is blood pressure, cholesterol regulation issues. And if we hunker down and we do some good stuff for a period of time, we see some good results, those things go away, then where are we at? What's going to happen at that point, right? Are we going to go back to doing the same thing that we did before, and then those problems come back? And then we have to do it again, and then we think that this whole dieting and thing is or nutrition, it's a fad, or I can't do it, I'm not good enough, what have you. Start talking down on yourself. If it's a short-term goal, it's going to be short-term results generally. If our goal is long-term, if we're looking to what the bigger why of why you want to do it. Anybody ever read? I think it's not Malcolm Gladwell. I can't remember the author, but he has a book about the importance of why. About it's the why you do things that make you change your life, not the how to do it or not the what to do. It's the why you're doing it. So for me and my why, my why is to be there for my family, to be able to be healthy for my family, to provide for my family. And myself. But a big of the why for me is what I've seen happens whenever we don't do the things that are necessary and congruent for our body and for our health. So just very briefly to talk about it, my mom died when she was 49 from brain cancer. And a large part of that is due to the lifestyle that she lived. I'm not going to say 100%, but I would say probably well over 90% of it. And cancer, for most people, even though there are some genetic predispositions, there's something called genetic determinism, using genes as a scapegoat, that we say, this happened to me because of my genes. And sure, we have to realize we do have genes, and there is some increased probability that you may have some health problems because of those genes. Blaming it all on your genes takes the responsibility away from you. So you've got to put your own responsibility on yourself as much as you can, and then whatever else happens, it happens, and you did the best that you could. My dad has had 4 heart attacks in his lifetime. He's still alive today, but every time I get a phone call from my older siblings, I'm afraid today's the day, right? Today's the day. And my dad was just in the hospital again. He's diabetic. He's on dialysis every single day. Kidney failure, can't be put on the kidney transplant list. He had a bunch of 8 inches of his colon resected because they found some cancerous cells there. Right? And I can give you my grandparents' history, and it ain't good. I can go through my lineage and say, they happened to them, so it's going to happen to me. Or I could live a different lifestyle. And I'm going to tell you, I live a very different lifestyle than my family members. And, that's brought me to the health that I have today. So my goal, or what I hope for you whenever you leave, because I'm not going to ask you to do it here and, write down what's your why and we're going to share and sing Kumbaya. But what I hope for you is that whenever we're done and you get some good information, that you think of why is it that I want health, and why is it that I want to try to improve my health, and really think hard about that, because that's going to make sure that you actually, that you implement some of these things, and that it's going to be much more of a long-term result. And obviously, it's also beneficial to have other people who want the same thing, and to have a strong room, if you will. What's the saying that you're only as successful as the 5 people who are closest to you, or something like that. So having people around you who want similar things is going to make it more likely that you're going to be successful in the things that you're trying to achieve. Now, anytime I start any one of the workshops, or I try to do this, sometimes I forget because I don't like PowerPoints, so I don't put any notes on them. It's all straight from here. First thing that I like to talk about is the body, something called vitalism. And what vitalism means, and this is a very big contrast or difference between the medical mindset. I'm not demonizing medicine. I'm just saying medicine is based off of a principle or a philosophy called allopathy. And what that means is we're treating something. We're treating something. There's an illness, there's a sickness, there's a problem. We now have to do something to get rid of that symptom, sickness, illness, disease. It's an outside in. Something's wrong inside, so I have to give something from the outside in to be able to do something about that. Vitalism is kind of the exact opposite. It's that it's an inside out. It's we need to fix something inside. We need to address something. There's a problem inside that's creating symptom, sickness, disease, etc. from happening. That the body is inherently made, innately made, godly made, whatever you want to choose, to be able to heal and to function and to thrive. We're made for health and vitality, not sickness and disease. So it's a very different approach. And due to that, our goal is to give the body what it needs, not to give it something that it didn't need. The body, you're not inherently made to need blood pressure medication or thyroid medication or digestive medication. You're not inherently made for that. Again, not saying there isn't a time and a place, but we're not made for that. We need certain nutrients. We need certain things, and there's certain things that inhibit normal function in our body that we don't need. So if we give the body what it needs, we take away what it doesn't need, what happens to the body? Does it function better or worse? Obviously, it's going to function better. So first, whenever I talk about what the body needs before we get into nutrition, I'm going to talk about the spine. What? The spine? Why is that in a nutrition talk? I think most of you, if you're patients, you know why that's in a nutrition talk for me. So just briefly going over this, this is an X-ray of a young woman. I mean, she's in her 30s, late 30s, so I'm going to consider that young. Looking at her X-ray, for those of you who are patients, you know this. If you don't, this is looking at the front of the pelvis and of the spine. So simply what we want to see that the pelvis is level. We want to see that the spine is straight. Pretty simple. We can see that this woman's pelvis, there is a significant structural deviation in her pelvic height, right? It's 13 millimeter difference in the pelvis, which is very large. The normal range is 2 millimeters or less. Because of that structural issue with the pelvis, that's causing a compensatory scoliosis in the low back of 15 degrees. So is that good structure or bad structure? This is bad structure. So clearly, as a chiropractor, I see the bad structure. I want to fix the structure because bad structure affects your movement. It affects the muscles, the ligaments, the joints, etc. Potentially, not always, but potentially causing pain, discomfort, inflammation, muscle spasms, etc. Let's fix it to help you to live a better quality of life free of those things. Wonderful. But can everybody see there's something else going on in this X-ray? And some of you have seen this X-ray before, but this X side of the X-ray, you see how clear that is? This side of the X-ray, what's all that stuff? All that stuff is gas and fecal impaction. So this woman has had an issue called hypomotility of her intestine for decades, which what that means is that the intestines, the muscles of the intestine, for things to pass through your digestive system, which is like 30 feet long from the mouth to the other end is about 30 feet long. For things to pass through, something called peristalsis has to happen. And that means that everything, the muscles in those organs are literally squeezing. It's like a tube of toothpaste. They're squeezing things through. Well, those muscles are controlled by something. What are those muscles controlled by? The brain that's controlling everything else. I'm flexing my arm. What's controlling that? My muscle or my brain, because I'm telling it to happen. Well, everything else is also being contracted without me thinking about it, but it's still happening, and it's because my brain is sending a signal out to those muscles. Well, for this young woman, her brain wasn't communicating out to those muscles for some reason. And what I mean by some reason is that this condition that she had is idiopathic. And what that means, and the majority of the medical diagnoses that we have are idiopathic. What that means is we don't know. We don't know why you have this. And if we don't know why you have it, we don't know how to fix it. All we know how to do is to make you more comfortable, right? Understandable, right? Nobody wants to live with severe pain and health problems, so you're going to at least try to comfort yourself. Meanwhile, what's happening to that problem most likely over time as we're making ourselves more comfortable? It's getting worse, right? So for this woman, she started having these issues whenever she was a teenager, wasn't born with it, which tells you something, that it was developed. And then over time, it's been getting worse and worse, severe bloating, severe pain, bathroom issues, just not living a great quality of life. Lots of medication, etc. She came into the office because she had low back pain. Not really surprising looking at her X-ray. Our goal is to correct her spine, not to heal her low back pain, but to allow her body to function better and for it to heal. So this is her x-ray after corrective care. So pelvis, we'll talk about structure, 13 millimeters down to 8. That's a great improvement. 5 millimeter change. Pelvis is a very strong structure, very hard to change. 15-degree curvature down to 5 degrees. So structurally, great improvement. Would everybody agree? But everybody else is looking at the other change on the x-rays, I hope. Not good. Great. Normal. Now, this woman, the reason that, and her issues, spontaneous remission. It's spontaneous. We don't know what in the world caused this. This is amazing, and it is amazing. The body is amazing. The way that the body can heal itself and function better is absolutely amazing. It's a complete miracle. The reason that it happened, however, isn't a miracle. The reason that it happened is because her body wasn't functioning correctly, because she was getting a lack of communication from here through the spinal cord out the nerves to here. We were able to correct these structural problems, restoring better communication, allowing her body to function better. Her digestive system healed, and now she's able to live a better quality of life. Why am I telling you all of this on a nutrition talk? I'm telling you this because we can have the best nutrition. We can have amazing nutrition, take supplements, and we're going to talk a little bit about supplements briefly, but take some great supplements. But if our body's not able to digest it, break it down, if our body's not able to assimilate or absorb it, get it into our bloodstream, if it's not able to assimilate it, turn those nutrients into new healthy cells, I'm not going to say it's all for naught. It's better that I would rather you eat, good healthy food than McDonald's, no matter what. But you're not going to get the best out of it, which is why we want to allow the body to heal and function as best as possible. Now, great. So let's get into nutrition. This is a quote from Thomas Edison. It's up there on my wall as well, so you may have seen it in the past. The doctor of the future will give no medication, but will interest his patients in the care of the human frame, diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. This is vitalism. This is give your body what it needs. It needs certain nutrients. It needs certain foods, macronutrients, micronutrients, and it doesn't need certain things. Avoid those things because they're going to have deleterious effects on your body. Thomas Edison was talking about vitalism. Now, again, I want to emphasize that we're not saying, and I have never said, that we don't need medication. I have said I don't like medication because I don't like where it tends to lead somebody on the medical merry-go-round. I would like for us to find the problem and fix it, but there's a time and a place absolutely for it. Our goal is just to fix the underlying problem so that we don't have to live on it forever. So we're going to go over, and the way that I like to talk about nutrition, we're really just going to have 4 bullet points, 4 slides. You're not going to get any information from here other than this. It's about as simple as it gets. And then I'm just going to talk about it. So the first, and these are in order of what I see. This is personally, some people would disagree maybe, but what I see to be the most important changes or things that you can do for your overall health and wellness. And this is also for people, who are dealing with certain symptoms, disease processes, etc., that are what I would call the industrialized diseases. You know what I mean? Like these aren't things that most people in Africa are suffering with, although they are much more so now that they're having the Western diet is coming into a lot of those countries. These are things that we're suffering with in America, in Europe, and Canada, etc., with our food system. So changing these things are going to benefit us if we have any of those symptoms. And just to say what they are: heart disease, cancers, diabetes, obesity, autoimmune issues. Those are the big ones that are largely, well over 90%, contributed by lifestyle, in particular diet. So if we improve the diet, we improve some of those things. Also, just really briefly, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. I'm breaking this talk up into two sections. So one, I'm going to give you all just generalized nutrition. We're going to go through some of these tips and things, nutrition talk. We're going to take a little bit of break, about 45 minutes maybe. Take a little bit of a break. I'm going to make y'all some smoothies if you like smoothies. So we're going to have some berry smoothies. And then after that, we're going to talk a little bit more about healing the gut or healing the digestive system. which for a lot of people is where health problems are coming from something called leaky gut, permeability of the gut. If you don't want to stay for that portion, that's fine. You can feel free, grab a smoothie and have a wonderful day. But if you want to learn more, because I'm starting to implement some gut healing protocols for patients in the office. So if it's something you want to learn more about, stay and we'll go over that a little bit afterwards. But first thing, cut the carbs. Most important thing that most people can do for their overall health and well-being is to cut the carbs, parentheses, sugar. Now, why is sugar in the parentheses? Because all carbs, and when people think of carbs, I think a lot of times they think of complex carbohydrates like bread, like pasta, like potatoes, corn, rice, grains, etc. That's what most people think of when they hear the word carbs. And that's true because those are carbohydrates. But so is simple table sugar, is a carbohydrate. And all of those complex carbs, whenever you eat it, immediately when you put it into your mouth, you have an enzyme in your saliva called amylase. The job of that is to start the breakdown of that carbohydrate into sugar, because your body can't absorb those large carbohydrates. We can only absorb smaller forms. Well, in normal conditions, if you have good digestive system, you can only absorb small little chains of carbohydrates or sugars. So immediately when you put it into your mouth, those carbohydrates are starting to break down into sugar. And then when your body absorbs it, it's either glucose or sucrose or fructose or galactose or maltose, depending on your digestive system and how healthy it is. So you absorb these very short chain sugars. So in that regard, that piece of heart healthy whole wheat bread is sugar. It's table sugar. In fact, there was everybody familiar with the Dr. Oz show? Dr. Oz is a cardiothoracic surgeon who's actually running for senator in the state of Pennsylvania. It's very interesting. But anyway, he is a surgeon. So he, one episode, and this was years and years ago, probably a decade ago, he had an episode where he took contestants from the audience, and not contestants, audience members. There we go. It's not a game show. Audience members, and he had half of the audience members eat a piece of bread. I think it was whole wheat bread. And then he had the other half of the audience members eat a Snickers bar. And then they waited a period of time, and then they checked their blood sugar. So that's literally your body breaks down the food, the sugar goes into your bloodstream to get to the cells. And high blood sugar, I think everybody knows, is not good. So any guess, I'm sure you can guess by the way I'm saying it, who had the higher blood sugar, the Snickers bar or the bread? The bread. The bread had the higher blood sugar. It broke down quicker, that piece of bread broke down quicker by the body, jacking up the blood pressure more quickly, increasing, which means it has a higher glycemic index. If you've ever heard of that word, the higher the glycemic index, the quicker your blood pressure spikes after you've eaten something. It has a higher glycemic index than that candy bar. And the reason that is because, and I'm not saying advocating you go get Snickers over your bread. The reason is that candy bar has fats in it, has nuts, and it has oils probably that aren't healthy for you. So we're going to get to that fat section in a second. But it's just to say that bread, grains, those carbohydrates that we have often been taught are good for us, right? We've been led by the FDA, that food pyramid. That food pyramid is a lie. That food pyramid is not what's actually good for us. There's a lot of, and we're not going to get into the politics of food right now. There's a lot of politics behind food and what is advocated for each and every individual in regards to what you should be feeding yourself and your children, right? What we're having in the cafeterias for our kids to eat is, I'm going to say, for the most part, garbage. And it's based off of lack of science or misrepresented science or omitted science. But just suffice it to say, carbs should not be at the bottom. Grain should not be at the bottom of that food pyramid. It should be near the top of that food pyramid, meaning you just take the food pyramid and you almost flip it upside down. So we need to minimize, and I want to go over just briefly from a physiology standpoint, how carbohydrates is the leading cause of cancers, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, autoimmune issues, all of those issues. This is the leading cause from a nutritional standpoint. We'll start with heart disease, because I think we've been taught that the big culprit for heart disease is what? What have we been taught to demonize when it comes to heart health? Fat. We've been taught to demonize fat. Most of it coming from a study called the China study. It was back in the 1970s and 60s. There was another study by a gentleman named, I think, something Keys, Ansel Keys or something. But it was these studies where they looked at different countries and they looked at their food intake and they saw what is their cardiovascular risk. And they took a bunch of countries and they compiled it and they put it on a chart and they showed, oh, look at that. The more fat these people are eating, the more rates of heart disease. So you think, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense, until you get to the data that they had. So in the end study, I don't remember, I haven't looked at it for a long time, but the countries, I want to say they had maybe 10 to 15 countries on this chart. But if you look at all of the data that they had data for closer to 40 or so countries, a lot of countries, but they only put about 15 of them on the chart. Why would they do that? Because the other ones had plots that were way over here. They didn't fit the narrative of what this chart was trying to show. And it turns out that this guy was actually hired by the sugar industry to be able to do this, in large part. So there was a lot of fraudulent, but that science or that knowledge still holds true for a lot of people today, because we've been told that low fat is going to be good for you. And if you get rid of the fat, if you lower the fat, what goes up in most products? The sugar generally goes up in most products. So in reality, for heart disease, putting it really simply, one of the big culprits is because of inflammation. And I'm sure everybody in here has heard of inflammation before. So what is inflammation? If you were to twist your ankle, what happens to that ankle? It swells, it gets red, it gets warm, it's painful. That's inflammation. Inflammation means that there's damage to a tissue. And I'm going to say this, inflammation is good. Inflammation is good. Inflammation is good. As we've all been taught, it's bad. It's not bad. It's good. It's bad when our body does it in excess, but it's good for us. We need inflammation. Inflammation means healing. No inflammation, no healing. You take anti-inflammatories a long time because you've got low back pain. Guess what? You're setting yourself up for chronic low back pain because it's not healing. You're not allowing it to heal appropriately. Again, time and a place, but we need to try to allow the body to have that inflammation reasonably while correcting the reason why it's inflamed. So whenever you eat a lot of sugar, that sugar gets into your bloodstream. The sugar will damage the blood vessels. The tiny little bits of sugar circulating throughout your bloodstream is going to damage your blood vessels. And that damage of the blood vessels is going to cause those blood vessels to become inflamed. Now think about what happened to that ankle. It got bigger, it got red, it got hot. So what happens if our blood vessels should look like this? You know, there should be a nice big healthy lumen or diameter of that blood vessel, but now the lining of that blood vessel, the muscles and the connective tissue, everything's starting to get inflamed. What do you think happens to the diameter of that blood vessel? It narrows. It narrows because everything is getting puffy. We'll just use that word. And that narrowing of the blood vessel is now going to increase your what? Blood pressure. It's going to increase your blood pressure, which means your heart's going to have to do what? Work harder. And that hard working of the heart is going to cause the muscles to get bigger, called hypertrophy. It's also going to, that decreased narrow lumen of the blood vessels is going to make it much easier for things to get stuck in those blood vessels, such as plaques, such as cholesterol. I'm going to go over why cholesterol is not a demon. It's not all bad. But it increases your susceptibility for blockages, increasing your susceptibility for heart disease and for stroke. And now you need to take your beta blockers and your calcium channel blockers and your diuretics and your cholesterol, we'll get over that in a second, but to be able to open up the channels. And now your heart's not working quite as much, yes, but did you fix the problem? So what's going to continue to happen and what are you going to continue to have to take, right? So if we fix that underlying issue, the inflammation, then our body's going to be able to heal to the best of its ability, and we may be able to come off of those things. Cancer. Do you know how they find cancer or how they can detect it and determine if it's growing? There's multiple ways. I shouldn't say there's one way, but one of the most popular ways is something called a PET scan. Have you heard of a PET scan? Positron emission tomography. So it's the same thing essentially as a CT scan, which is computerized tomography, which is where they're taking just the bazillion x-rays in different angles, and that gives them an amazing image. Well, with PET scans, they put radioisotopes into your blood, so radioactive dye, so to speak, and then they can track where is that radioactive dye going. Well, for cancer, they inject sucrose or some sort of sugar directly into your bloodstream. Why would they do that? Because that shows which cells in your body are most metabolically active in regards to sugar, meaning which cells are taking up the most sugar. Which cells take up the most sugar when they do that? The cancer cells. So it shows them cancer has about a 6 times higher affinity to sugar than your normal cells, meaning it eats or it metabolizes sugar. We've known this since, I want to say it was the 1930s or 40s, by a doctor by the name of Otto Warburg. He won the Nobel Prize for realizing that cancer feeds off of sugar, and it doesn't do well with oxygen. Oxygen is not good for cancer. So hyperbaric chambers, there's a lot of natural treatments when it comes to cancers. A lot of the things are hard to get in the United States, or they're not even FDA approved. Not getting into the politics of things, but cancer is a big biz. There's a lot of money in it. But that sugar is it's feeding the cancer cells. Now, I told you my mom died from brain cancer at 49. After my mom had her cancer treatments, her chemo, her radiation, her surgeries, especially her chemo treatments, they did an experimental procedure on my mom where because things weren't working, she'd go into remission. It happened twice. She went into remission. They did the chemo, surgeries, radiation. They kill it, right? That's what those things are geared for killing. They kill it. What came back? What did she not change? She didn't change diet or anything else. Why? Because she was never told to. She was never advocated to eat better food, to move her body, to avoid toxins. Never happened. It was just, we need to kill it, kill it, kill it. We're going to treat the symptom. It's allopathy. We're going to attack. Rather than how can we help the body. And again, time and a place for surgeries, all those things. My mom, she was going through an experimental treatment where, because it was brain cancer, they thought, instead of putting the chemo into the blood, which is where they usually put it, what if we put it into the brain, into the spinal fluid instead, to surround the cancer, which is in the brain, to surround it with the chemotherapy. So they took off a portion of her skull. They put a port directly onto her head, kind of like a little balloon thing. And that port fed down into one of the ventricles, which is a space that's inside of the brain. It doesn't have a ventricle. And that's where a lot of the spinal fluid is housed. And then spinal fluid, through spinal motion, actually gets pumped through your spinal cord. Your spine has to move for that spinal fluid to get pumped, which is important for its spinal motion. So they took out some of the spinal fluid, because you can't just put stuff in. You have to take some spinal fluid out. Now, the job of spinal fluid, if you're not aware, is to bring nourishment to your nervous system and to take wastes away. So they took that out and they put chemotherapy directly into the ventricle. Now, if you were to use one word to describe what's the purpose of chemotherapy, to kill, right? So you're putting a substance that's meant to kill surrounding the brain, which controls what in the body? Everything. What's probably going to be the outcome? It's probably going to destroy the thing that's controlled. And that's exactly what happened. Very, very rapidly, my mom's health was completely just drifting away. Her life was drifting away. Her organs shut down. She was gaining so much weight because her kidneys were starting to fail because lack of communication. Her skin was tearing in places. She was in hospice care. I was a chiropractic student at the time. I got a phone call from my dad, said, get home. I got home and I was holding my mom's hand in hospice while she passed away. So I am very frustrated at this model, to put it lightly, because I know the damaging effects that it can have firsthand. And I don't want that for myself and for my family. I don't want that for my patients, which is why, if I get really on my soapbox, I've had some negative feedback, but hopefully that people realize where it's coming from for me. So cancer, sugar, there's other things, there's environmental toxins, there's all those other stuff, but from a nutritional perspective, sugar. Diabetes, that one's pretty easy, right? I don't need to go into that one too much. Everybody knows sugar and diabetes. You eat a lot of sugar, your blood sugar goes up, your pancreas has to release a hormone called insulin. The job of insulin is to open up your cells to get the sugar out of your bloodstream and into the cells, because high blood sugar can kill you, put you into a coma. So we got to get that out. Now, if you're doing that constantly and that pancreas has to kick out more insulin and more insulin and more insulin and more insulin, eventually that pancreas gets worn out. It's like, I can't do it anymore. You just keep asking this of me. So the pancreas gets worn out. And if the pancreas gets worn out, your insulin goes down. But if you keep still eating all that sugar, now you have really high blood sugar. So now we have to turn into an exogenous insulin, put the needle in the leg, inject the insulin, because we need to bring that down. Over time, when you keep inundating your body with more and more insulin, now the receptors on your cells wear out. It's called insulin resistance. So your cells are saying, we can't do this anymore. And now it gets to the point where you have to check your blood sugar nonstop all the time, because we need to know how much is there in that area. So it's sugar that's leading to this process. Type 2 diabetes, for vast majority of people, type 2 diabetes is the number one cause of our high healthcare costs. Did you know that? Because we can treat it for a long time, whereas cancer and heart disease, a lot of those things people, pass away from. And diabetes care costs a lot of money, especially things like dialysis costs a lot of money. So if we want to watch that, and most people with type 2 diabetes, it's reversible. It is reversible. And it's very, very easy, but it's not simple to do. Good diet, good exercise, creates your body can heal. Those receptors can heal. Pancreas, depends on how much damage there is, pancreas may be able to heal as well. Obesity. Why does sugar cause obesity? Not fat. Fat, if by eating large amounts of fat, cannot make you fat. It can't. The reason being is that you can only store fat when your body releases insulin. Insulin is a storage hormone. It causes your body to store things. Sugars in particular. So whenever and the cells where most of or that have the most insulin receptors are fat cells. They have more insulin receptors. So whenever you eat a lot of sugar, it opens up, and fat does not stimulate insulin. So fat can't make you fat. It has a lot of problems if you have bad fats, but it doesn't cause weight gain. But if you're eating a lot of sugar, releasing a lot of insulin, those fat cells are opening up, say, give us the storage, give us the energy. We need to, you may be in starvation mode one day, so we better hold on to all of this energy. So it causes fat accumulation because of the sugar. So sugars, now, I don't want to be all gloom and doom, right? So what I want to say is it doesn't mean that you can never have sugar. It does mean there are bad sugars, there are better sugars. One, the big things to decrease consumption of that most people, I think, eat way too much of are grains and are complex carbohydrates. So grains, potatoes, sweet potatoes, rice, corn, to decrease your overall consumption of those things and try to find alternatives. It's not about, we're not trying to do something temporary to let's go on the keto for 30 days, right? That cuts out all grains. I'm going to get great results, and then I don't need keto anymore, right? And I'm not blaming keto. Ketogenic diet is good, and some people can maintain. I maintain a semi-keto diet most of the time, low carbohydrate diet most of the time, and I'm just used to it. And it just is what I do. There are bad low-carb diets, like the Atkins diet is a bad low-carb diet. It was very successful, right? Everybody remember the Atkins diet? Dr. Atkins was a cardiologist who noticed when he cut sugars out of his patients' diet, their heart disease got better. They came off of their medication. That's how Atkins diet came to be, because of heart health. So to show you that carbohydrates, now Atkins diet doesn't differentiate between good and bad in a lot of aspects. You can eat, I remember seeing once upon a time there was a commercial for Burger King, and it was their Burger King, food on lettuce, Now, Burger King is still not good for you. Anyway, it's about quality in that regard. But that low carbohydrate diet can significantly improve overall function. So finding alternatives. If you do like grains and pasta and bread, finding better options. And we're going to get into toxins and things later. But there's a good company called Ezekiel. You may have heard of the Ezekiel products, Ezekiel bread, Ezekiel pasta. Without getting too much into why is that superior over conventional. It doesn't have the pesticides. It doesn't have all of the additives, all of the preservatives, all of the chemicals. It's an ancient grain versus a hybridized, genetically modified, potentially grain. It's sprouted, which is, we don't need to go into why that's beneficial, but it's good. If you see something sprouted, it's much better to have grains that are sprouted. So, but still using those things, using not sparingly, but not overdoing it. It doesn't need to be breakfast, oatmeal, snack, bar of some sort, lunch, sandwich, snack, again, a bar of some sort, dinner, pasta, potato. We just eat so many grains. So holding it back to maybe once a day, having your grain, significant benefit. If you do have a lot of things you're trying to reverse or results you need to see, getting rid of them completely for a time is going to be very beneficial. When it comes to actual sugar, like table sugar, I actually have this little demonstration. I thought it was funny that Cindy asked, where did you get the sugar? Because she knows that I do not have this stuff in my house. And my wife, I bought this stuff yesterday for this demonstration. And my wife, when she came home and she saw this and it was a full Coke on the counter, she looked at me and, what are you doing? like I was in trouble. So this, we'll start with this. This is the amount of sugar in an 8-ounce glass of juice, just your standard juice. Orange juice, apple juice. We think we're going to avoid, so we avoid sugars, we avoid sodas, etc. We know that that's not good for us, but juice is okay, right? Juice is something to be had very sparingly, preferably with a little vodka. But I didn't say that. But juice has a lot of sugar in it. If you're eating, and that sugar, even if it's all natural sugar, it is going to be absorbed and raise your blood sugar incredibly, incredibly fast because there's no fiber with it. Whenever you're eating a piece of fruit, that fruit has fiber. That's going to slow the digestion of it. That's going to minimize maybe some damaging effects that too much fruit even can have. And I think 1 glass of orange juice, an 8-ounce glass, it takes, I forget how many. I want to say it's 8 oranges, but it's something ridiculous, maybe a little less than that. But it takes so many oranges to get all of that juice out of it, right? Whereas if you were to just eat 1 orange instead of having that 8-ounce glass of orange juice, you're going to feel more full, right? It's going to satisfy you more, and it's actually going to have some health properties rather than that. So that's how much is in one thing of juice. How much sugar is in a Coca-Cola or your standard soft drink? That's 16 teaspoons of sugar. 16 teaspoons. Now, what makes this even worse, not just how much sugar there is in it, is what type of sugar it is. High fructose corn syrup. So the biggest sugar to avoid is fructose, because fructose has a lot of damaging properties to it, especially if it comes from high fructose corn syrup. So fructose coming from your foods, look at your labels. If there's sugar in it, right, when it's fructose, try to find an alternative that's not a fructose sugar. This right here, this is a 4-pound bag of sugar. So I was hoping to find a 5-pound bag, but I could only find, they only sold it in 4. The average American eats a 5-pound bag of sugar every week. Every week. 100 pounds a year. The average American eats 100 pounds, or close. I shouldn't say the average American, but a lot of Americans eat up to 100 pounds of sugar every single year. And I was going to bring a 100-pound thing and have you guys pick it up, but I decided not to. You just know 100 pounds is a lot of weight. Eating that much sugar a year, oh my goodness, right? Is there any reason or any confusion as to why we're at the health that we are? Number one growing, and this is in children, number one growing disease process in children is diabetes. You guys know that? The diabetes, type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset diabetes, and type 1 was child diabetes. It's just an autoimmune issue. Usually it starts in childhood, but now type 2 diabetes is no longer adult onset because so many children have diabetes these days because of the sugar and the lack of exercise that they have. So we got all those autoimmune issues. So autoimmune are a little bit more complex, and it's a little more difficult to, but just to put inflammation. Inflammation is going to be directly linked to an autoimmune. If somebody, I'm not going to ask you to say, but if you had an autoimmune issue and you knew it, and you ate a high sugar diet, guarantee you're going to feel worse after doing it. You're going to have more inflammation, and it's going to affect you more because of the effects of sugar on immune system and just inflammation as a whole. It's got to damage those things. So what are some sugars that, not to say to eliminate 100%, but trying to make those alternatives using things like wraps, whether it's a coconut wrap, an almond wrap, lettuce wraps. When it comes to if you like pasta, I had one lady I was doing a nutrition talk, and she said, "I love my pasta. I can't get rid of my pasta. I'm Italian. I'm from Sicily. I can't get rid of it." And I said, "Okay, so what's your favorite pasta? Fettuccine, fettuccine. If I gave you a bowl of fettuccine and there was nothing on it, no salt, no butter, no sauce, are you going to enjoy that bowl of fettuccine?" I said, "No way. I need my white wine. So I need whatever I need." So it's not the pasta that you like. It's the flavor. That's what you're putting on that pasta that you like. Now, sure, there may be a texture thing that you've gotten accustomed to and you really like that. And that may take some time to change, but there's good alternatives for things like pasta, for things like rice. Using cauliflower rice, take you a little time to get used to the texture change. Using spaghetti squash, using zucchini and making zucchini noodles. Good alternatives to a lot of the things that you may eat on a regular basis when it comes to sugars. So first, just really briefly, anybody have a question on sugar or carbohydrates that you'd like to ask? Yeah. Ladies first. Yeah. Great question. I'm glad you asked that. So my recommendation, and this is for people who don't really have a lot of things that they're trying to change. They're not trying to change their health. They just want to eat healthy. 2 servings of fruit a day. 2 servings. If they're berries, berries aren't counting. There's a few things that aren't going to affect your glycemic index very much, if at all, causing insulin spikes that you can kind of eat more liberally. Berries would be one. Make sure to get organic. I'm going to talk about that soon. Lemons and limes aren't really going to affect it. Grapefruit, Granny Smith apples, those things you can eat kind of as much as you want to a degree, but most other fruits, try to limit it to 2 a day. I'm just gonna say whatever the fruit is. Whatever. One apple is one banana is one. Yeah, just to keep it simple. Rinse it.
On the back of the Coke bottle, it will have on the label.
Yep. How many grams of sugar? 65 grams, which is 16 teaspoons. Yeah.
So I bought a gallon of regular orange juice that says no additional sugar added.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any difference based on what you just said?
No, because like an 8-ounce glass of orange juice is about 20 to 25 grams of sugar. So they're making it sound better. It's a lot of things. Reading the labels and sometimes is hard, or reading the product, because it's marketing, right? It's no added sugar. Excellent, no added sugar. Okay, but it's still 23 grams. It's still how many teaspoons was that? It's still 6 teaspoons of sugar. Whether there's added sugar or not, it's natural sugar, all natural, not from concentrate, right? So they're saying all the right things, but it's still that much sugar.
So does it make a difference?
Mm-mm. No, I mean, I would say, let me take that back. Yes, if you're getting a juice that they're putting in, they're adding sugar on top of what's already in there via the juice. I mean, that's going to be worse for sure. So we could look at a lesser of 2 evils would be just having juice without the added sugars in it. And sparingly. Obviously, you're on vacation somewhere and you want to have a glass of orange juice, right? Or you're at home and you just say, I'm gonna, 1-2 days a week, I just really love orange juice. Wonderful. A good thing to do when it comes to carbohydrates, especially if there is something that you want, trying to make sure that it's a good quality, is to time it close to physical activity. Time it close to a workout. Because your body's going to burn it off. With that circulating blood sugar, your muscles are going to be able to use that for energy rather than it getting stored in your cells. So sugar, this is the major thing you don't want to have at the end of the night, because when you're going to sleep, now all that sugar is going into your fat cells. Now you're storing all of that sugar. So if you're going to have a snack at the end of the night, make sure it's a fat protein, more so fat, because protein, if you eat excess protein, your body will do something called gluconeogenesis, which means that it's converting that protein into sugar. Your body can convert protein into sugar, and that's what it's going to do if you have a lot of protein, because again, your body's always thinking, I may be starving one day, so I better use this as best as I can and store it if I can. So it's going to take that protein, break it down into amino acids, convert those amino acids into sugar, store the sugar. Now, it's not incredibly effective and easy for the body to do, but it's going to try to do it. Right? Yes, sir.
What's the carb content?
I think very low. Yeah. I mean, there's certainly there, but I don't want, I hazard to say that it's probably less than 10 grams of sugar in a glass of red wine. And beer is going to obviously be a little bit more than that. But yeah, not too much. Straight vodka is going to be just about none. Yeah.
I started getting like I had like syndrome, but it was every time I had a glass of red wine, I would get like that. And then I found I don't know if it has anything different to do with sugars.
Yeah, or maybe sulfites or preservatives.
Yeah, sulfites. I remember related to sulfites.
Yeah, and that's what causes a lot of people to have hangovers and headaches. So if you get hangovers and you don't like them, get rid of the sulfites. And then maybe you won't have hangovers. All right, so carbs. Let's go on to the next most important thing that you can do. The next thing that you can do for your diet overall is to fix the fats, not to eliminate the fats, not even to reduce the fats, but to fix the fats. Like I said, I think that fats are, and this is assuming that you have a gallbladder, because if you don't, then that it's harder for you to digest fats because you need the bile to do so effectively. But fats are incredibly important for your health overall. For a lot of reasons. But fats, a lot of people have been taught it's demonized. So they look for low fat options. So there's good fats and there's bad fats. So first, what are bad fats? Does anybody have an idea of bad fats, examples? Nope. But we're going to go over conventional versus non-conventional. So it is an important distinction with animal fats, and we're going to definitely address that. Yes, vegetable oils are probably the number one. The number one fat that most people consume that have deleterious effects on your health overall are vegetable oils. And what are vegetable oils? One, the thing that actually says vegetable oil on it, which is made from grains. It's not made from vegetables. So it's a complete lie, even from that standpoint. Canola oil. Canola oil is not good for you. Very, very harmful for your health. And the reason that these things are harmful is because they are polyunsaturated fatty acids. They're very unstable. They damage very easily from heat. Your body heat is even enough to damage, when it's inside of you, to damage this oil and to cause it to oxidize. And everybody's heard of antioxidants, right? Antioxidants are good for you. Well, that's to battle the effects of oxidation in your body. Most of that is caused by certain foods that we eat. Those oils oxidize very rapidly and creates these things called free radicals, which contributes to immune issues, contributes to inflammation, which we already know is bad, contributes to a lot of other damaging effects in our body. So these highly unsaturated oils are very harmful for our health overall. So, and canola isn't even a thing. Some of you have probably been in nutrition before, so don't give it away if you have. The canola, what plant does that come from? Anybody know? Don't give it away. Don't give it away. Is there anything called a canola plant? No, there isn't. Does anybody know that? Okay.
I'll get it wrong, but it's something like Canadian something oil company.
So that's how it got its name, because it got its name canola Canadian oil. That's how they named it canola. It comes from a seed called the rape seed, RAPE seed. So rape oil is not very advertisable, marketable. You can't, I'm going to just have more rape oil. So they changed it to canola oil because most of it at the time, I don't think this is true anymore. I think the United States, I'm sure, has overtaken Canada, but most of it was being produced in Canada. So they shipped it over places. And if you were to try to look at the production of this and what it takes to extract the oil out of this, it's kind of gross. But anyway, so now, and the rape seed is very toxic. The seed, I can actually, if you were to eat the seeds, you could die from the rape seed. The oil that they extract from it, you'll still die earlier, just not quite as early. Still very toxic for you. So vegetable oil, canola oil, peanut oil, sunflower, safflower oil, cottonseed oil, corn oil. You want to avoid those oils. Some of them are less dangerous than others, but avoiding all of them as much as you can. In any restaurant you go to, that's the oil that they're using, right? So if you can it's going to sound crazy. Go to a restaurant, be better for you to have them cook in butter. What butter? Yes, butter.
I was just going to ask
Yeah.
you about that. I learned how to make my own clarified butter.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned with vegetable oil is
Yeah.
that it removes the trans fat. It tastes better.
Mm-hmm.
It has a higher smoke point. So I want to know your opinion.
Yeah, so butter shouldn't have any trans fats in it unless it's been adulterated by man. Unless man has messed with nature, there's no trans fat in butter. So what happens when you clarify a butter is you remove the protein solids from it. That the proteins, you melt it, you turn it into just fat, and you get rid of everything that's not fat when you scoop off the excess, when you turn it into ghee or clarified butter. So what we want to switch to, if you can't use those oils or maybe shouldn't use those oils, is switching to things that are safer to use when you're cooking, assuming it's for cooking. Safer for cooking are things that have a very high smoke point, very low, they go rancid or oxidize very slowly, and that's going to be saturated fat. Saturated fat and monounsaturated fat to a degree. So what are those? Whenever we're cooking, sauteing, the major one that we use is either butter. You can use things like a tallow or an rendered animal fat, or using a coconut oil, if you're okay with the taste, the flavor that it gives, or avocado oil. Avocado oil is probably the big one for us. We really like it. It's very mild flavor, but it has about a 400-degree smoke point. So you can cook with it as long as it's not over 400 degrees, and you should be fine by using that avocado oil. I love the taste of butter, so we use butter as well, if you're okay with using animal products. But it comes down to what is the quality of the product. If you're getting a poor quality from conventional, if it's, let's say, an animal product like butter, if it's conventional, it's more likely to have some toxic substances in there, and for it to potentially have some other things that are going to have bad effects. Going more natural, like a grass-fed butter, something like Kerrygold, if you've ever heard of Kerrygold, is going to be a wise decision. Or Organic Valley is a pretty big company that's all in every grocery store. So just switching it to more of a natural, clean source is going to be beneficial if you do use butter. Tallows and things, so you can buy those in like Whole Foods and health food stores. Not using Crisco or any of those other solidified. Whenever they take a fat that should be liquid at room temperature and they turn it to make it solid at room temperature, that's trans fat. That's how they do that. So a lot of these things that we've been taught are good. Again, Crisco, the way they advertised that when it came out was that this is going to be good for your heart, whereas the animal fats are bad for your heart. The exact opposite is true. The exact opposite is true. Margarine, no, they've adulterated it to make it more solid at room temperature. So going with a more natural, have your butter, enjoy your butter, cook your eggs, keep the yolks. The yolks are important. The yolks are the healthiest part of that egg. The whites are less important. They're not important at all. All the white is protein. It's albumin. The yolk has lots of nutrients in it that are very, very good for your brain, good for your skin, good for a lot of things in your body. So eat the yolks with the butter. What are some other bad fats? So nuts and seeds are good whenever they're, especially en masse, roasted. They can go bad very quickly. So if you get nuts and seeds that are already roasted, especially if they're salted and they pour a bunch of bad oils on them, but even if they're roasted without oils, their shelf life goes way down because they only have a certain amount of time before the oils that are in it, the natural oils in it, go rancid. So getting roasted nuts and seeds, it's not the best option. It's better to get raw nuts and seeds and to roast it yourself if you like it roasted. Put some herbs on it or some salt on it, put some avocado oil, and roast it at a very low temperature in your oven and eat it within a week. Store your nuts and seeds preferably in the freezer or in the fridge to help, especially if you like to buy bulk. If you buy small quantities and you eat it fairly quickly, don't worry about it. But if you like to buy bulk, Costco, okay, put it in the freezer. That's going to keep it from going rancid, so that you can, keep using it safely. Some other unhealthy fats. I think we all, omega-6s, we've all, I think, know are damaging, or maybe you don't. So omega-6s are damaging to the body. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. So fish oil, that's why fish oils are good for you. Krill oil is good for you. Some other ones is because of the omega-3s, because we need to counteract the high omega-6s in our diet. Now, this comes down to, in part, the animal, question about fat or animal products in general. So conventional beef has obviously fats in it, but it has omega-6s and omega-3s in that beef, not in conventional and grass-fed. Conventional beef, and by conventional I mean it's raised on fed grains. It's on a slaughter lot. It's not great conditions for the animal. That type of stuff, and that's the majority of the beef in our grocery stores. That conventional beef, if you were to look at the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, a normal healthy ratio for your diet is anywhere from a 4-to-1 ratio to a 1-to-1 ratio is good for your diet. That conventional beef is closer to a 40-to-1, omega-6 to omega-3. So that's obviously way off. That's very inflammatory. That omega-6 is inflammatory. Omega-6s help your body to help inflammation or cause inflammation. Omega-3 are anti-inflammatory. If you look at more of a good grass-fed, grass-finished beef, which we're blessed to live in this area. There's so many grass-fed farms all over the place. That's going to be more of a 4-to-1 ratio. What do you know? The way God made it is the way that it's beneficial for our bodies. So it comes down to, when it comes to animal products, getting natural, grass-fed, pasture-raised, that sort of things. Those aren't just buzzwords. That is actually important. Now, obviously, you're going to want to try to do that as cost-effective as you can. So I'm a fan of getting it from a farm, getting a large quantity from a farm and storing it in a freezer. That's what we do. We get a quarter cow and split it with my mother and father-in-law and my sister-in-law and their family. And I want to say it's like $6 a pound and you get all sorts of cuts, ground beef, roasts, steaks, and it's great. And we last us maybe a couple of months to a quarter of the year. But as much as you can to be able to make those switches. So other good fats are avocados are just amazing fat. Coconut is like a panacea. You can use that for so much, but the oil, coconut meat, coconut flakes are really good. Nuts and seeds are good, but again, just knowing how to eat those, and the oils and everything else that I already mentioned. I think that's it. Any questions quick on fats?
So for the nuts and seeds,
Mhm.
I know
Yeah, so it depends on why they can't eat it. A lot of times people get digestive issues when they eat nuts and seeds, and it's because of something that's on the outside of a lot of plants, but especially nuts and seeds and grains, are things called phytates and lectins. And these phytates especially, it's a chemical, we'll say, that's on the outside of the nut to prevent it from animals from eating it, in a sense. So it does damage to our digestive system. So if you can buy those nuts and seeds, just like I said for the grains, if you could find it sprouted, if you can get a sprouted nut and seed, what that means is they soak it in water and then they let it dry, and that's sprouting. I don't know why it's called sprouting. You don't see little things coming out of it, but that's sprouting. And that decreases the phytate and the lectin that's on the outside of it. You can do it yourself, soak them, and then put them in a dehydrator or dehydrator, yeah, to get the water off, or you can buy it sprouted, soaked sprouted nuts and seeds. But then if it's an allergy issue, then we have to go into the allergy question. Why is this person developing this allergy or the sensitivity to the nut? And this comes across the board for most people who have allergies or sensitivities to certain foods, which we're going to talk a lot about in the second half, is because of leaky gut. It's because there's damage to the digestive system. I actually just literally yesterday, this happened. I have a patient, she said she just did some blood work or an allergy test to look at the allergens and what's affecting her, which I think is a good idea to know that if there's something that you're eating or in your environment that's doing that. And she said, everything that I eat is positive, like everything I eat. And I told her that's not a huge surprise. I mean, that's actually pretty common. And the reason isn't because those things are all bad for you. It's because you have leaky gut. It's because you have damaged digestive lining. So a lot of the foods are leaking through the the wall of your digestive system, and they're getting into your bloodstream, and they're not fully broken down. And now your body sees this particle of food, we'll just say, and your body sees it, and your body knows that it's foreign. Your body knows that should not be here. So your body attacks it, and it mounts an immune response to it, creating B cells. The T cells are hypersensitized. So then whenever you expose yourself to it again, you're going to have an immune reaction. You're going to have histamine production. You're going to get sinus issues, potentially runny nose. You're going to have all of these joint issues. It's going to affect your body. It's not that almonds are bad for you. It's that your digestive system's not doing a good job, which is why we've got to heal the gut, especially in people with autoimmune issues or things where they're just getting a lot of inflammation in the body. All right. Any other questions about fats? Yes, ma'am.
So if you're taking like, could you much omega-3?
No, I would say definitely not. I think you could still continue to take that omega-3 because we're still getting, even if you really do a good job, we get a lot of omega-6s in our diet, and it's hard to really avoid that. So to make up for that, to take an omega-3 supplement, I think is smart. When it comes to supplements, there's 2 supplements that I make a blanket statement that I think everyone should take. They should always take it. One is vitamin D. Vitamin D is so incredibly important for just about every single process in your body. Your body needs vitamin D. We're not in the sun enough. Even if we are in the sun for a long period of time, then we intentionally try to block our sun exposure, which is going to block our vitamin D production. So vitamin D and then an omega supplement. Those are the 2 to always take. Man, woman, child, doesn't matter. Yes, ma'am.
But can't, excuse me, can't vitamin D be toxic at high levels?
You have to have such unbelievably high levels for it to be toxic. You have to go out of your way to toxify yourself but it can. You are right that it can because it's a fat-soluble vitamin. So over time, your body will absorb and store that vitamin D in the cells. A normal, and there's a ratio, but just for simplicity, 5,000 IUs a day of vitamin D is not only perfectly safe, I think that's a good baseline for most adults. But I know some practitioners, other chiropractors who do a lot more in terms of blood work and testing, that have given patients over 100,000 IUs for their condition. And they're testing. So they're looking at the blood work and they can see, where are their levels and things, and they're still fine with that. Now, they don't do that forever, but for a short time, and they're fine with that. So a lot of people are scared into thinking it's that vitamin D is going to do that. I don't know why, because it would be very hard for you to toxify yourself with vitamin D.
The dosing in like the normal CVS is so low.
Yeah. Well, the RDA, and this is what's difficult about labels, the recommended dietary allowance, I think that's what RDA stands for, is 400 IUs a day. That's like enough to prevent rickets, which is the disease caused by, a lack of vitamin D, where your bones get soft because you need vitamin D for strong bones. So kids, you see with these bowed legs, 400 is wholly inadequate. I wouldn't give my baby, I want my baby to have more than 400 in a day, much less an adult. So 5,000 is good for an adult, roughly. And then omega-3, really important as well. And there's other supplements that I think are just a good idea to cover your bases, so to speak, because we don't get all the nutrients in our foods today that I wish we would because of our farming practices mostly, even if it's a good farm. And that's just a multivitamin, B vitamin, magnesium. Most people are deficient in magnesium. Those are really good supplements to take as well. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Omega 2,400 to 1,200 to 2,400 a day is, for kind of just a baseline is pretty good. Now I don't know if they still do this, but I know they used to. Certain countries, I think England did this, but I forget exactly which. Certain countries over in Europe, it was part of the normal practice that their doctors, before prescribing blood pressure medication, would actually prescribe high-dose omega-3, high-dose fish oil, before going towards a medication because of the anti-inflammatory effects, because the blood pressure issues and the heart issues are largely due to high inflammation. So that's kind of a good level dose, but if somebody has, a big issue, lots of inflammation, and they want to help reduce, they could do more than that. And it won't cause any major issues. All right, fix the fats. Next one, trash the toxins. You guys notice the alliteration so far? Right? Curb the carbs, fix the fats, trash the toxins. My wife's name is Kimberly, and I had to marry someone with the first name starts with a K because I like alliteration. So that's one of the reasons that I married her. So trash the toxins. What I mean by that are one, starting to go organic, natural, really avoiding pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, preservatives, things of that sort, because those things I think they're not good for us, right? Can we just agree on that? They're not good for us. Makes sense that if you have this chemical that's meant to kill things, you put it into your body, it may have damaging effects. You have more bacteria. We need bacteria. We are walking petri dishes. We have more bacteria in our body than we have cells, our own cells in our body. They outnumber us. And if we're killing those bacteria, whether it's with an antibiotic, which that can certainly save your life and when it's appropriate, but most people, we use them way too much, or whether it's through something on our food, that is going to have a lot of harmful effects on our health overall. Preservatives, no bueno, especially if you're eating a food that needs a preservative. Hopefully there's a better option. Now, I do want to say first world problem, because there's a lot of people, these foods that I'm demonizing right now help a lot of other, like the amount of starvation across our world has gone down so much because of some of these products and things. So I also want to just kind of say the industries have helped our world to a large regard. I don't want to just demonize everything. We are blessed to be in the United States of America, where we can be more picky and we can look at our health overall in these ways. That other countries, they're not dying as much from preventable or infectious disease. Now they're starting to die from our diseases, right? I guess that's a good trade-off. But for us, we're lucky enough that we can avoid it. Toxins, also like to mention plastics. To try to avoid plastics when it comes to your foods and your drinks. Just as an example, that's why I put some of my drinks up here, and because I'm thirsty. But using this Coke, or we could just say a water bottle, right? Even a water bottle. Let's talk about water bottles. If you had a water bottle, I'm sure we've all done this. You have a bottle of water, it's in your car, you're out shopping or do something, you go into the store, you come back, the water's warm now, but you're like, I'm thirsty, so I'm going to drink it. What does that water taste like? It tastes like plastic. Why? Because it is plastic, because you're drinking plastic. And you don't know, even if you don't taste it, it's refrigerated, where has that bottle been before it got to you? Has it been outside sitting in the sun at some point? Now, it's not to be, neurotic. If you have a bottle of water, so be it. But it's to try to not drink out of it as much as you can. Have a bottle with you. So what to drink out of as much as possible? Glass. I love kombucha. I'm not going to get into, but fermented things are great for your body. Kombucha is a fermented tea product. So it takes you some getting used to, but I just reuse the glass bottles. That's what we use. Love it. Yes, Sophia. And then also stainless steel. So this is just stainless steel to drink out of. Avoiding aluminum. You don't want to use aluminum products to drink out of, because aluminum is a neurotoxin, and that over time can actually get into your foods. When it comes to food, food comes in plastic. What are we going to do? Not buy things at the grocery store? No. I mean, you do what you can, but try not to store things in plastic. Store things in glass and Pyrex and stainless steel, etc. So my hope is that you do what you can and not be neurotic about what you can't or what's difficult to change. And why are plastics so damaging? Plastics, for many reasons, but one of the big ones with our health, plastics, whenever they get into your body, a lot of times are recognized. They're called xenoestrogens. And what that means is your body, to your body, it looks like estrogen. And estrogen obviously being a hormone that women and men have in our bodies. And whenever your body's getting all of these exogenous estrogen-like substances, your body says, okay, I don't need to produce my own estrogen. So it can lead to this hormone irregularity or hormone balance, but you can actually get an accumulation of these xenoestrogens, especially in certain tissues. So what certain tissues do you think, especially women, are going to get maybe an accumulation, are going to be affected by these xenoestrogens. Breast and cervix or uterus, right? What are the top cancers in women? Breast, cervix, uterus, right? So a lot of it, and it's not just plastics. A lot of it, those xenoestrogens, you can look at, just Google xenoestrogens and try to look at what kind of products. A lot of cosmetics have these in them. A lot of cleaning supplies also have these types of things in them as well, which is why it's really important to try to change those toxic things as well. Last one I'm going to talk briefly about, because I already mentioned the big thing that I like to mention, is perfect your proteins. So by that, what I'm mainly talking about are your animal products. Animal products. So animal products, trying to get that organic, the grass-fed, free range. Those words really, really important to try to get with your animal products. Animal products are good for you. I'm going to say this, and I will swear to it. And I've had my own blood work done because I get insurance, life insurance, and they check my blood work. I eat a lot of red meat, a lot of red meat. I eat more red meat than I eat chicken and fish. I want to touch on that really quick. I'll touch on that in a second. But I eat a lot of red meat, and my blood work, check everything, cholesterol, all that. My HDLs are off the charts. Right? And HDL, I think most people are aware, the good cholesterol. LDLs are low. Which, just to say, as an example, that it's not necessarily the food, it's not necessarily the meat. It's a culmination of things that are causing these blood markers to be off. And it's been demonized as being saturated fat. It's not the saturated fat. It's the quality of the foods, and it's sugar as well. That sugar actually increases your cholesterol production more than an animal product or more than a fat does. I also like to say that cholesterol isn't bad. The reason I like to emphasize it is because there are some people who have advocated at giving everyone cholesterol-lowering medication prophylactically. Children. They're even, and I forget what country, they were talking about putting it in the water system. What are you talking about? So why is cholesterol not bad, but it's been demonized? It's not to say that it can't cause problems. It can, but we need to really understand what is cholesterol. Cholesterol is a carrier molecule. It carries things throughout your body. And cholesterol in particular, it helps things to be able to heal. So if there's high inflammation, there's high cholesterol, because like we said, inflammation is your body's ability to heal, or your body's way to try to heal things by bringing nutrients and bringing substances to that area. One of those substances is cholesterol to that area. So if you have a large amount of inflammation, you might have a large amount of cholesterol as well. So again, let's look at the cause, look at the inflammation. So the analogy I once heard somebody use with demonizing cholesterol when it comes to things like heart disease is if there was an arsonist, and they are just lighting fires all across Chester County, and you're driving around and you see all these fires, and at all of these fires, you see there's a firefighter at just about every single fire. So logic would tell you, right? Reasonable thought should tell you, if you don't know anything about firefighters, the firefighters are causing the fires because they're at the fires. So they must be causing the fires. So we need to get rid of the firefighters because they're causing all of this fire. You think, well, no, duh, the firefighters are there to fight it. Same thing's true of cholesterol. The cholesterol is there to fight. It's there to heal. It's there to correct. It's not there to cause problems. Now, that being said, it can cause problems if it's unregulated and if your levels are off, but just to say it's not all bad. Fish, I like fish. Fish is good. Fish, you want to make sure you're getting natural caught. You don't want farm raised because of a lot of the bad effects. What are they feeding the fish? What dyes are they putting into the fish to get it to look nice when they put it on the market? But I think in general, we need to limit our fish. Mostly it's because of the toxins, not because of the fish itself, because there are just a lot of toxins that are in fish, especially the bigger the fish, the more the toxin. But even in smaller fish, they can find it too. So your safer fish are your small, your anchovy, sardines, mackerel. When you're getting up into like salmon, that's when you're getting into more toxins. So I would say twice a week, maybe, if you like fish, twice a week, which most people don't eat that much fish, so that's fine. Twice a week. If you're getting into things like you like swordfish or tuna, once a week, if that. because those big fish really are going to have more toxins stored in them. So perfect. Any questions about proteins? Oh yeah, organic, free range. Yeah, chicken as much as you can. So touchy subject for some people, but I like bacon, so I'm going to give you my perspective. It's the same kind of as everything else. It's try to find the best quality that you can. When you're buying products, you want to get without nitrites in them. Trying to get organic. I mean, organic when it comes to an animal, that means that the animal is being fed food that doesn't have a lot of pesticides, herbicides, fungicides sprayed on it. Because if it's being fed those things, it's going into that animal, it's being stored. Those toxins are stored by your body. In particular, they're stored in the fat. This isn't true for us too as humans. If we're having difficulty losing weight, one of the potential reasons maybe there's a lot of toxicity in our body. And our fat cells are holding on to those toxins because it doesn't want to just dump a bunch of toxins into your body. So it may be holding on to the fat as well, which is why it's important to detox in addition if we're trying to lose weight. But when it comes to animal products, pork included, just try to get it as natural as you can, organic, all of that. And when it comes to that word organic, I'm a bigger fan. The first things to switch, animal products before plants, before produce, is to switch your animal products. After you do that, and then you're ready to make some more changes, you're learning how to shop, where to buy food to make it cost effective, because I agree, a bit more expensive to buy things organic and more natural. But the saying that I use is you pay for it now or later. You pay for it now in your food, in your energy, in your gym memberships, etc., in your healthcare, or you pay for it later in sickness, disease, medication, or just you're not living the life that God intended you for. So how do you want to pay for it? So yeah, did I answer a question? Did I not answer? Did I avoid a question? I probably did. I may have. Oh. Oh yeah.
So what about the chicken that's free range? You know, some chicken just eat anything.
Yeah.
So how do you know?
We have to have some trust in our producers. That hopefully, if it's a company that is producing organic things and they're saying this is organic, even that word organic, what does that mean? That it's a third party that the government has said to this company, you're an organic certifier. And then the organic certifier then goes to the farm and they say, is everything you're doing correct? Are you doing things the way we want you to? Good. Okay. But what if they go to a huge company, right? What if they go to a company that was bought out by another company and the organic certifier goes, I'm not saying this is happening, but they go there and they say, is everything correct? And that person says, here's a couple $100, just turn away. That I'm sure there's some shady business, but we have to, again, without being neurotic, we just have to put some trust in these producers that they're doing things correctly. So I think the smaller the company, the better, although the smaller the company, generally the more expensive it is as well. So it's a trade-off. So we just do what we can. Any other questions for me? Yes, ma'am. E. coli is bacteria, or it comes from a bacteria, the toxin that comes from a bacteria. And E. coli can be on really any food, but it usually comes from fecal matter. So if it's an animal product, if they're being kept in terrible conditions, more likely to have E. coli poisoning. Or if it's depending on where the produce was grown, if they're using animal feces as their fertilizer, more likely to have E. coli on it as well if they don't test their fertilizers. Which it's hard because animal byproduct makes a good fertilizer, good natural fertilizer, as opposed to fertilizers that are synthetic. They have their own, environmental. They're really harmful on the environment, but they also potentially can cause some harmful effects for us. But we can produce that synthetically. It's safer from a not going to have E. coli standpoint, but there's a lot of harmful effects. So it's kind of that trade-off, which I don't know if you guys are aware of this. We're about to have a lot of crazy, we already have high food prices, but I don't want to get into too much politics, but fertilizer, a lot of it is made in Ukraine. So, and they ship it throughout the world. A lot of our fertilizer comes from Ukraine. So we're going to have some big issues when it comes to food production. Yeah. So the first thing to do is to stop toxifying. First step, find what are we doing that's not good, eliminate that, right? That's what we're talking about here. Detox, some natural things you can do. You can look up natural detox, and there's some simple things like lemon juice is great detoxifying. Apple cider vinegar is great at detoxifying. Um, uh, Ginger, I believe, is good and helpful at detox. So you can do some natural things that help to eliminate the toxins from your body. But then there's also some things like supplemental that you can do. Charcoal, or just certain detox supplements. Charcoal's a big one that binds to toxins, but there's certain supplements as well that actually, whenever they go into your bloodstream, they help to pull toxins out of the blood or out of the cells itself. And that will help to free up those fat cells for you to be able to lose, the unhealthy fat accumulation. So if you look at a cell detox, you look up cell detox, you might find ones that help with that. All right, nutrition in general. We're going to go on to the next step because I as my usual, was long-winded. Any last-minute nutrition questions that you guys are burning to know, you were hoping I would cover and I didn't talk about it? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned about cutting the carbs, like cutting the grain to 1 grain per day.
Mhm.
So I want to get it clear, so grain meaning obviously the whole wheat radish grain,
Yep.
and rice or potatoes, all these are grain, right?
Mhm.
So are you really cutting down to
Yeah.
one portion, one side?
So let's make it, we do have to look at the individual because people are different. Our metabolisms are different. Our abilities to, eat certain things are different. So if we have someone who has no major health concerns, body composition, not really having any goal, they just want to be healthy, they've eaten those things and they still have that health, and they're going to have good quality, and they do a little bit more, they're probably okay to do it. Whereas if we have somebody who has goals, they want to be able to reverse certain conditions or reduce inflammation or lose weight, they need to be more stringent. So it comes down to how much, how stringent are we? So actually, kind of on that note, all of you